Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn a little bit more about the banking and finance industry. My name is Devanya Porter. I'm the manager of education programs here at the Economic Club of Washington, and I have the esteemed pleasure of welcoming you all here today, but also introducing Sadvhi. So Sadvhi is an Economic Club member, and she currently works at US Bank. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Sadvhi, for some opening remarks. But students, I just want you all to know that you all can come off mute at any time. This can be very interactive. Please drop your questions in the chat if you don't want to ask out loud, but we do welcome you to this session, and we hope that you learn a lot and ask as many questions as possible. So without further ado, Sadvhi.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be doing this session, and thank you for having me on. My name is Sadvhi Subramanian, and I'm the Market Manager, East Region for Commercial Real Estate at US Bank. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you might have. Feel free to ask your questions on the call or in the chat, whatever works best for you. As a commercial real estate lender, I know some of you are in the finance industry, but just wanted to tell you, what do we do? We finance buildings and projects and transform communities. Builders and developers, they come to the bank for financing for a project. Banks do their diligence, and if they feel it is viable, they help the developers with financing the project. If you look at places like the Wharf in DC or Mosaic in Merrifield, that really took vision, it took time and patience to create. We as commercial real estate lenders help to transform cities and communities by coming to the table with a financing solution. Of course, we do need to make sure we structure the loan properly, we mitigate the risks in the transaction, and we also see a path to making adequate returns and getting paid back, right? It's great to see cities change through our financing and through commercial real estate and evolve over years as a result of development and change in demographics. If you look at a city like DC, it's very different than it was 20 years ago. I really like what I do. What I like about commercial real estate lending is, we finance buildings, see them come out of the ground, communities get revitalized as a result of development, changes take place in the communities and neighborhoods, we get exposure to multiple types of properties and individuals, and also all kinds of capital structures. Lots has evolved in the finance world in the last 20 years. I am responsible for the bank's commercial real estate loan portfolio in the eastern part of the country. I do not have New York, New Jersey, and Philly, but have the rest of the East for US Bank. I thought I'll share a little bit about my background and career journey. So I grew up in New Delhi, India, and pursued a finance degree during my undergraduate years. My path to CRE or commercial real estate was not planned, but it evolved as opportunities presented themselves over the years. So right after I finished my undergraduate studies, I didn't go into commercial real estate. I founded the Center for Contemporary Art in New Delhi. This was a commercial art gallery in the heart of the city. I had to pitch to a CRE developer who owned the space and agreed to finance my venture. And according to our plan, we were going to be turning a profit in 2 years. We actually were profitable in the first 6 months, and we became the premier gallery in India with all the top artists showing in our space. A couple of things happened. Our timing was perfect. The Indian contemporary art world was taking off, but the business really was all about differentiating ourselves from others. And I think in everybody's career, that's what it's all about. What can you do that others can't? What we did at the gallery was we signed contracts with the top contemporary artists. We leased art to multinational corporations and built relationships with their executives, provided a professional environment with the right lighting and catalogs to promote the shows and to build goodwill with the artists. The Center for Contemporary Art, even though it was the first venture, gave me a lot. It gave me the opportunity to develop interpersonal and marketing skills in the real world. It exposed me to the business environment where I was talking to decision makers. And it also let me make mistakes and learn from them. It was about taking a huge risk and doing something completely outside my comfort zone, and it paid off. After about 7 years of running a successful business, I joined my husband in St. Louis, Missouri. I worked at the St. Louis Art Museum with the curator of Asian art and quickly realized that with just my undergraduate degree from India, I really needed to go back to school and educate myself to have a career in the US. I went back to school and had the opportunity to work in investment banking. I think coming from a different culture, during this time, one of the toughest skills I had to learn was to advocate for myself. I realized just hard work is not always enough. People have to know and hear about your value and know how you contribute to growing the business. It's really, really important. Soon after we moved to DC, in a fairly weak job market, this was in 2001, I started the process of exploring career opportunities in the area and started networking and trying to expand my contacts in DC. My introduction to real estate began by chance. I got a job at Chevy Chase Bank as a financial analyst for commercial real estate. I had a fantastic manager. He constantly pushed me, challenged me, and encouraged me to take initiatives inside and outside the bank. I got involved in a number of industry organizations and started to recognize the power of relationships and the impact they could have on one's career and personal development. In 2009, Chevy Chase got acquired by Capital One Bank. I stayed at the company for 20 years, constantly expanding my scope and the markets that I covered. Right after COVID, I had a reckoning and decided I needed to change something. And in October 2021, I made the move to US Bank as the commercial real estate market manager for the East region. My team currently covers national and regional developers and institutional investors in multiple markets in the East. At US Bank in 2002, we made some changes. We opened our Florida office, hired 2 experienced bankers to run the market there, consolidated Tennessee and Kentucky, and made some changes in Ohio, Boston, and the DC market teams. I'm really excited about my move and look forward to continue to build the team and the business here. Another area which I have spent a lot of time and energy is DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's been an integral part of my journey. I do continue to be active in these efforts at US Bank. At the bank, I'm involved in the CRE program for women. I'm a sponsor for the Project Destined team. I'm also part of the executive mentorship program for senior leaders. I continue to stay involved in the DEI effort in the industry and have consistently mentored women and diverse individuals at both my companies, ULI, which is Open Land Institute, and CREW, Commercial Real Estate Women DC, to help them navigate the corporate environment, assist them in getting recognition for their contributions and accomplishments, and to develop their skills in order to create opportunities for professional advancement. On the personal side, as of last year, my husband and I are empty nesters. Our daughter is a sophomore in college, and son is based in New York City, like many other young professionals his age. We're enjoying having time and the house to ourselves and looking forward to continue traveling and seeing more of the world. I think in my journey, there are 3 things that have guided me. The first being the power of relationships, this being the most significant of all. I think it never hurts to build your network at any stage in your career. Getting involved in industry organizations, that's a good way to start the process. I think an active and open network of mentors and sponsors guides us in navigating difficult situations and helps to constantly learn about the industry and others. Also, I believe for any relationship to be long-term, there has to be a level of respect and trust, and both parties have to gain something from the relationship. That's how I approach most of my clients and work and loans. I think I've always stressed on building a team that works in a cohesive and collaborative manner and giving people the ability to make decisions when necessary. The second thing that's guided me is really taking risks, getting outside my comfort zone, pushing myself at times. Moving from India to the US, starting a new career, it was a huge risk, but I think in the end, it paid off. I embarked on a new career in a new country, and have really enjoyed every aspect of my journey doing that. The third thing is finding ways to get recognized for my work and continuing to bring a diverse point of view to the table. Being comfortable with who you are as an individual, I think that helps to put your views on the table. And I think this includes advocating for yourself. I realize that working hard and doing well isn't always enough to acquire the jobs you might want. You need to make connections, demonstrate why you should have a certain job, and take on and also have the ability to take on that responsibility. In my last job, a position opened up that would expand my scope. I asked for it. I was not given a straight answer. I kept persisting, provided performance data and a defined strategy that would create growth opportunities in that position. I decided to go to the people who influenced the decision maker and finally got what I wanted. I think advocating for yourself and being really clear, passionate, and persistent about what you want and asking for it helps. Yeah. I think I've enjoyed my career in CRE as I feel I learn something new each time. Every transaction is a little different than the last, and I think CRE is always evolving. So it's an interesting, exciting area to be working. And I know you guys have put out some questions in advance, and I don't know if you guys want to ask them now, or do you want me to just answer them? Happy to do it any other way.
I'm just going to chime in for a second. When you all come off mute and ask your questions, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us what year you got the scholarship and if you're currently in the industry or not.
I'll go first. My name is Bakari Seibert. I am a 2016 economic scholar, graduate of Howard University, Luce Scholar, and currently residing in New York. And I would say I'm on the periphery of the industry. I've had the opportunity to do some consulting work for some groups that do work in global economics, and my current job is a nonprofit that focuses on political economy. And I'm in the midst of like trying to make a transition deeper into finance. And so with regard to your statement about taking the risk of reaching out for support and going directly to individuals with decision-making power, the nonprofit I work for typically recruits people who either have a finance background or a research background. I happen to be on the side that has a research background. And in all honesty, I'm kind of worried about reaching out and letting them know that like I'm trying to make that transition because I don't want them to move me from the company before I'm able to find my next spot. And so what would be, I guess, your advice on like how to broach those conversations, knowing that like, I have secondary connections that can be made, but it is a risky conversation.
So do you need to have that conversation internally, or do you think you could go out to the industry and talk to some people in the industry and get some advice from them? Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think?
I think I could do both, and I have been doing both.
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I think, when you're making a transition, and I'll talk a little bit about my transition. Okay, I worked at a company for 20 years. It was a really tough decision for me to leave, but obviously I was craving change, or I wanted something to change. I was getting restless. So it really took me 6 months to make the decision to leave. And during that 6 month period, I talked to a lot of people who I trusted, and very honestly, saying, I want to make a move because of XYZ. What do you recommend? should I be looking at something other than CRE? And really had very straightforward conversations with all of them. And when I did that, that kind of solidified in my mind that I did want to leave. And also after talking to everybody, also, gave me the thought process that I wanted to stay in commercial real estate in a big bank. So my sense would be, it really depends on the company. If you feel that it's not a great job market right now, if you feel that talking to people in the company might jeopardize your job today, I would probably talk to a bunch of people outside and get some advice from them first, and then maybe concentrate a little bit. You said you're in research, but you want to get into finance. Concentrate a little bit on building your finance skill set, and talk to people a little bit about what do I need to do to be successful on the finance side in the same organization that I'm in. And they might be able to give you some tips. You might be able to take some courses. You might be able to, make some contacts, which might be able to help you. And then when you've done all that, it might take a few months. Then maybe you can go back and say, hey, I spent time building this skill set. This is why I think I'll be successful. And then go back to them and have a conversation. But anytime you do that, you have to be ready to face the consequences. And the consequences would be that they might sideline you and say, hey, you're not interested in this job. So I think you have to be confident in your ability of getting to where you want to get, but also you have, but anytime you're taking a risk, you have to be able to face the consequences, so it is really, and different people react differently. So you can gauge the situation better than anybody else. So if you really feel your job is in danger and you don't want to lose your job right now, I would talk to people outside the company and build a skill set which gives you enough, powder to go ahead and tell them, hey, I have the skill set. I want to do it. I know the company. I already know this side of it. Now I want to get onto the finance side of it. Does that help in any way?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, there were some questions about internships, and I know this is it's just a difficult environment, and there are a couple of thoughts that came to my mind. And there's been some articles in the Wall Street Journal about internships as well. I think in this environment, you really have to be very persistent. You have to treat it like another subject. If you're in college, it's not easy. It's changed a lot in the last 12 months. But also you have to know that there are many people who are in the same boat as you. I did speak to a few young professionals and I asked for their advice on the topic because they're in the market and, I'm really not, I'm on the other side. So I think what they told me, and this is similar to the answer I gave you, is you really need to concentrate on increasing your skill set, not just on getting an internship, but what's the ultimate goal? Getting a job. So get the skill set to get the job that you want. So going on career fairs and colleges. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Career fairs and colleges, other than your recruitment center, going to resources outside your school campus. LinkedIn, I know you are on LinkedIn. It's a really, really powerful tool. Following companies on LinkedIn, following people on LinkedIn that you like. One thing which was very interesting, and this is not coming from me, it's an article in the journal again. It says change some buzzwords in your LinkedIn profile every month or so. Because as the computer searches refresh, they might pick up those buzzwords on your profile. So it's interesting. They said whenever you're looking for a job or an internship and you're not getting any hits, keep changing some buzzwords on your LinkedIn profile. Then again, unpaid internships. I think to just, increase your skill set, gain knowledge, and get the work X that you want. Unconventional internships, maybe looking at not-for-profits, looking at other organizations where you have some skills where you can help them, like coding for a not-for-profit, helping them with marketing, helping them with finance, things connected to your ultimate career path. Then another thing which is a little bit different is emailing professors in universities for unpaid internships, getting into their labs. This may differentiate you from other internships. If they're doing something in finance or doing something connected with, I don't know, there's a lot of turbulence happening in the economy now. It may take 100 letters to get a couple of responses, but all you need is one positive response. So if it's really a professor who's doing work in an area of finance or anything else that you're interested in, might be an interesting way to get something for the summer. And then, of course, going wide, applying a lot, but being very, very targeted to 2 or 3 specific companies where you can make connections, go deep, and try and see if you can get maybe not the internship you want, but into the company to make the connections. Again, network constantly. I think that's really, really important. And then being persistent, not giving up easily, and then having a plan B. What if you don't do all that and still don't get an internship? Then you go about, how am I going to enhance my skill? Is there a class I can take, which will prepare me for the next job? So I think all that, and then I can put this in the chat. Somebody from HR gave me a list of internships at US Bank, which you can actually apply for now at this point. So I am going to go ahead and put them in the chat. So that's one of the questions that you guys had. I don't know if there's any other stuff, or do you want me to just answer some of the other? I'm not able to put it on the chat. What's happening?
Does anyone else have any additional questions at this time?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. So I guess, hi everyone. My name is Miguel Portillo. I was a 2015 Economic Club Scholar. I went to undergrad at Sewanee, the University of the South, in Tennessee. And currently I'm at Capital One currently, but I started right after undergrad. I started at Deloitte Consulting, so I was there for over 3 years. So I made that pivot recently into Capital One. So I have 2 questions. So my first question is, what factors motivated you to remain at Capital One for 20 years? So that's the first question. And then my second question is it's related to the bank industry, but I'll ask that after.
Okay. So Capital One was a really good company. It is a really good company. It really helped me build my brand in the industry. I constantly, could strive for more. And if you built your right skill set, you did the work that you were supposed to do, there was always scope for growth. So that's what I enjoyed. They're very innovative. They embrace new ideas and thoughts, and it's very entrepreneurial as a company. And I think for a young individual, it's a really good place to work, good place to get training. I had worked there for 20 years, so that's a long, long time. And I was kind of stagnating where I was. So it was time for me to move. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And my second question is related to, current, I guess, recent news in the banking industry. So I know, for example, like Silicon Valley Bank, right? Like being known for servicing like venture capital communities. So I know that collapse of Silicon Valley Bank sparked some concerns about the US banking system. So for example, like a liquidity issue that ended up causing like, the bank to be taken over. And so a lot of people were concerned and moved their bank, retrieved their assets from the bank, right? And then went to a new bank. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that, like 250K coverage fund? Yeah, like what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that the banking system will change like in the upcoming years?
So the banking system always changes every time there is some turbulence in the market, you know. So will it look, the basic premise of borrowing money and lending money will not change. People will still want to take loans from banks, and banks will continue to lend. That's what they do, right? They're in the business of risk and lending money. I think there will be some change. Always is with these kind of dislocations. And I think the economy is still not stabilized. You know, there's still a lot of turbulence, and it'll take a little bit before things settle down. I think what's interesting is there'll definitely be new regulation. You know, it might be different, but there'll definitely be more regulation on smaller banks, bigger banks. I think the regulators will try and make sure, or try and see that we don't get into this situation again. But what is interesting is I think opportunities always arise after turbulent times like this. Like after the GFC, debt funds emerged to fill the lending gap. They're not banks, but they're an alternative lending source. Should this have happened? Probably not. It's not great that it happened. You know, but I think the Fed stepped in and at least was able to avoid a crisis. My personal thoughts, is it all done? Probably not. I think there's more to come. I don't think the US banking system is unsafe in anyway. But I do think there will be some changes, and some banks may not, you know, make it all the way. Again, those are my personal thoughts, not US banks' views or anything like that. But if you're looking at US bank, that's why it's good to be in a big institution, right? If you're looking at an institution like US Bank, it's the 5th largest bank in the country. It's an A-rated bank, one of the top-rated banks in the country. It's been around for over 150 years, 170 years actually now. The ratios are all pretty solid. If you look at all the big banks, the ratios are pretty strong and solid. They have liquidity, they have you know, good funding ratios, and it's really difficult for any of them to not survive this crisis, but there will be some casualties. You know, and I don't think we've seen the end of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess just one more, just like an add-on question. So you think, and I guess it's kind of related to the question that just popped up in the chat. So, you know, as like citizens, you know, who, you know, we want to, you know, be good investors and make sure we, you know, we you know, hold our, you know, our capital, our money in banks, right? Like, would you suggest we like have bank with many, like more than one bank, like?
So it depends on your risk tolerance. Okay, there are different ways of, there are different products, and I'm not on the cash management side, so I may not give you the exact view, but there are different products at banks. Like even for large companies, there's something called an ICS account, where you can put it with one bank and they actually distribute it to multiple banks. It's, I think, about $100 million, and each bank has only $250,000 in it. So it's like 2,000, 3,000 banks in this product. So there are ways of doing that. As a consumer, you have to do what your risk tolerance allows. You know, so if you really want all your money to be insured, put it into multiple banks. You know, there are other products called sweep accounts, which are money market accounts where you can sweep the money into an insured product, you know, every night. So there are different products which are available. But again, you have to do what's best for your risk tolerance. It's really difficult for anybody else to advise you on that, you know. But I don't think the US banking system is unsafe in any way. And even these banks which went under, the FDIC is insuring all deposits, you know, so the deposits don't seem to be in danger today. Will that change in 2 years' time? Maybe, I don't know. But today it seems like the deposits are safe.
Thanks for that.
And sorry, did US Bank personally see an influx in account openings? I think all big banks did. I think all big banks got a lot of deposits from small banks initially, the week when Silicon Valley went under. And then after the FDIC insured all deposits, it kind of slowed down. But that week when it happened, yes, all big banks saw a lot of influx of deposits, especially commercial deposits. Not so much personal, but more commercial deposits.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Wade. I Economic Club recipient from 2011. Graduated undergrad from Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia. Thank you so much for your time. My question, I'm actually a pastor of a church in Baltimore. And I guess my question really deals with how, especially moving from contemporary art to banking, how did you in ways find intersectionality, if at all, with the transition of career? And how would you advise, someone who might be considering some kind of work on or activity within the finance industry, finding ways to find some intersectionality or to find collaborative ways to connect interests that, at least on the surface, seem opposed to each other?
So I think for me, it was a little bit different. I was very interested in contemporary art, and I took courses at the National Gallery and the National Museum in art. And I did a lot of classical Indian dance and music growing up. But my degree was in finance, and I can't draw. I'll tell you that much. I can't draw, So it was a business that we were running, So it was an art business, but it was a business. So it was sort of connected, even though the people in the business, artists, are very different to deal with than developers, right? Totally different mindset. So I think the best way to do that is really, getting some level of education in that field, in the field that you want to get into. And I think by doing that, you get connected to like-minded peers, and that opens up a lot more. You start thinking not in a one-directional way, but in a multifaceted way, because there's not one career in finance. There's so many different ways of getting into finance. So I think even when I came to the US, I realized I couldn't get a job. I just could not get a job with an undergraduate degree from India. So even though it was in finance, I had to go back to school. There was no choice, So I think that helps. It kind of grounds you. It makes you understand the profession you want to go into, or the transition that you want to make, a little bit better. And also, I think confidence-wise, it helps you personally in saying, hey, at least I'm doing something to get to this career that I want to get to ultimately, versus just thinking about it. And I think talking to people, just networking, talking to people, finding out about things, I think having the curiosity to just broaden your horizon, all that helps. But it's really making the connections and talking to people and getting education in the field you want to get into. Does that help?
No, it does. Thank you. Another question. I saw there's a question in the comments, so I'll make it quick. But what are some of the most influential leadership lessons that you've learned, particularly being a manager and a supervisor of people, in both an institution that you built from the ground up, as well as being a part of an institution coming in? What are some of those kind of lessons when it has come to supervising and having to motivate staff and things of that nature that you see that has been very helpful and impactful?
I think listening is a big skill. It's a really tough skill. You don't have all the answers ever. It's always good to come to a collective decision versus you making the decision every single time. There'll be times when you do need to make the decision. You can't be uber collaborative, you'll never get anything done. But I think respecting people, acknowledging that they don't need to be micromanaged, listening to them, and giving them a path, giving them a career path. If you're just doing very well where you are and getting patted at the back, at some point you're going to be disgruntled. You have to know what's next for you. That's just human nature. So giving them a career path, I think being honest with them about their capabilities and what you can or cannot do. If you're telling somebody, yeah, I'm going to put you in for a promotion, you better be sure that you're making every single effort to get them promoted and they deserve it and you can back it up. So I think just being very honest with people, being very direct. I sometimes err on the side of being too direct, and different things work for different people, depending on personalities. So something that works for me may not work for others, but I think having mutual respect and listening and collaborating, letting people be part of the decision-making process doesn't hurt. It never hurts. And also helping people along in their career path as to what's next for them. And learning from them. I'll say there are a lot of young people who are so good at technology, at different things, just being open to learning from people.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Did you experience any imposter syndrome as you climbed the ladder in banking industry? Did you feel male dominated? It's very male dominated. There's been lots of strides and a lot of DEI efforts, but it's still very male dominated. Jane Fraser is the only female leader of one of the top institutions. And she must be really, really good at what she does, to get there. And I actually had the opportunity to hear her at the Economic Club. She came and David Rubenstein interviewed her. She was fantastic. She was witty, easy, and she must be really good. I'd like to meet her someday. But imposter syndrome, yeah. And I think females get it more than men just because they're really scared. And I don't know why that is. And it happens it is a gender thing about taking on a job that they're not 100% qualified for. And they just don't feel comfortable if they don't have the full skill set. And males, on the other hand, will just do it and say, I'll figure it out. What's the worst that can happen? I'll figure it out. And you do feel, that there are times where you're in positions and you feel that, hey, maybe I'm not qualified. But I think what I've done in those cases is I've talked to people around me, tried to get the right answers if I don't have them, and just learn to live with it and try to get the knowledge that I need to get to, where I need to be. And then, did you feel it was male dominated? Yes. What kept you motivated? I think what kept me motivated was I really like what I do. I really do. It's interesting. I've been in it for so long. I enjoy the people. I like the industry. I like the learning aspect. I like the way it evolves and changes. The industry evolves and changes all the time. I like the fact that we create things, so I think that's what really keeps me motivated, and having a good team. And I always told myself, if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing at work, I need to change. And I think that's what keeps me going. And if things start getting stale, I try and find other things, like DEI is a good place, to start. You can always make inroads there. Being active in not-for-profit organizations, being active in industry organizations, just doing more than just my job is, I think, what keeps me motivated. Does that answer the question that's in the chat? Is there anything else anybody would like me to add to that?
I have a different question at
Sure.
this time. I would like to know your perspective on, given the fact that, the industry is changing a lot, And I'm interested in knowing like what, I guess, departments one should look towards that have like a decent balance of security, but also growth potential, from people who I've talked to in the industry. And based on my interests, like I'm frequently encouraged to like look at front office roles. But I also am aware that like those tend to have like a higher turnover, especially when there are like economic challenges. I was curious to get your perspective on that.
So when just to clarify what you're asking about a sales role versus a servicing role kind of thing, generating
Um,
income versus servicing what's come in. Is that your question?
yeah.
Okay. So it depends a lot on, I think, your risk appetite to an extent, you know, because any sales role, if you look at brokerage, if you look at even what I do, right, you have sales goals. You always have sales goals, right? So you have to go out and bring in the revenue. But when you're bringing in revenue, you're kind of justifying your existence because you're bringing in more money than they're paying you, right? Whereas and then also you have to enjoy it. If you don't like going out there in the front office, maybe that's not what you end up doing. If you like crunching numbers, if you like being at the back end, if you like, just making sure everything is going as planned, then maybe you stay, not on the sales side or not in the front end of the business. Both are very, very important. No business can run just by salespeople or just by people who are not, who are in the back of the business. They're both very important. There's growth potential in both areas, a lot of growth potential in both areas. I think in today's environment, I feel you really have to like what you do because there's global competition. It's not just US competition, right? You have people coming from India, from China. That's half the world's population, right? They're all here. So I think it has to be something you enjoy, something you're motivated about, and something you want to do, and it has to have growth potential. If you're taking up anything where you're just capped and there's no growth potential, that's a tough place to be. You have to be in a place where there's career growth. And for me, at least, my personality, I think there has to be growth potential. And if it's not career growth, am I broadening my horizons? Am I learning new skills? Am I, getting to a place where if I want to switch careers, I have the ability to do that because of new skills or new network that I've developed, in that position. That's how I would look at it. It's really a very personal decision depending on what you enjoy doing. And I think being in a job that you enjoy that's important to me, because I feel that's how you get passionate about stuff, that's how you grow, and that's how you build creative teams. Does that help? Does that answer your question, or was I way off from what you were asking?
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else that anybody had?
Sadvhi, I have a question. You spoke a little bit about like how you transitioned from India to come to the US, and I was just curious, do you have any program back at home in your Indian community to get them more involved in the banking industry? Do you work with them in any way?
I do not. I have to say I do not. But if you look at India, I think there are a lot of people, finance is very strong, math is very strong in India, and I do not personally, but there are a lot of people who train in banking and finance, and a lot of people who come over here. I mean, if you look at, it's kind of interesting. If you look at the top companies in the US and in the world, they're run by, many of them are run by Indians, who are all immigrants, which is kind of interesting, right? So I don't think they need my help, but no, I'm not involved. Should I be? Maybe I should be. I should get more involved. But I've just become an empty nester last year, so I need some time for myself right now before I go back to giving. Yeah.
Totally understandable. We are approaching the 3 o'clock hour. We have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone has any additional questions, now is your time to ask. Sadvhi, you can also check on your side, were there any pre-submitted questions that have not been addressed in this session? And if so, I welcome you to.
There was one, can you share a story on when you were resilient throughout your career? And I think just changing, banking's changed a lot. I went from investment banking. First, I went from an art gallery in India to investment banking in St. Louis. And then I went to Chevy Chase Bank, which was a small regional bank, to Capital One, which was a huge public company. So lots of bureaucracy, very, very different. And then having worked there for 20 years and then making the change again to US Bank, which is a much larger bank than Capital One Bank. It's the 5th largest bank in the country. I think just keeping an open mind, being adaptable to change. There'll always be things that you like and others that you don't like at all institutions. It's all about constantly, just learning, being resilient, and broadening your horizons at any point in life. And there was one more question. Let me see, what did you have? What skills are employers looking for in the industry? So I'd say finance, definitely. Finance background, basic knowledge of accounting is always helpful. Accounting is not essential, but finance, I think, is required today. Exposure to banking, if you can get internships, some level of computer science skills or coding classes. Even though that's not required for banking, I think it's become more and more relevant in today's world. And I think any career that anybody takes up, you're going to need it or you're going to come across it. So I think it's really helpful to do a course in computer science or coding or language or something connected so you understand it. If you want to go into investment banking or trading, you do have to take the Series 7, Series 63 or 79 exams. Skill sets are similar to skill sets in any other area. Finance is important. Writing, presentation skills, I think being collaborative in a team, and leadership skills, that helps in any job. I think it's, again, having passion about the career you choose. It's really, really difficult. Global competition is a factor which you all have, which we didn't have. Finding your niche, just learning how to differentiate yourself from everyone else. What can you bring to the table that others can't? Doesn't always have to be a skill. Is it a diverse point of view? Is it information? Is it, it could be multiple things. Just something which you can bring, which others don't have access to you. Again, take classes, interact with people. There's so many different ways of getting into finance and commercial real estate. I think if you're looking at commercial real estate, there was an article I was reading and it really summed it up well. Commercial real estate includes a diverse group of well-educated professionals designing, developing, investing in, and managing the places where you and I live, work, shop, and play. So I think that's a good way of summarizing what commercial real estate is. And then, if you're looking at careers, there's banking, private equity, debt funds, agencies, CMBS, portfolio management, which is directly related to real estate, commercial brokerage, residential brokerage, leasing brokers, development, property management. Then there's related fields like architecture, law, and so many other fields which kind of relate to commercial real estate. So that's my thought on do you need anything, need any skill set for banking? I think finance is the only thing where you should have some knowledge. Everything else is similar to most other banks that you get. I think those were all your questions. Was there something I've left out?
I think you answered them all. Thank you so very much for taking the time to speak to the students. Again, this session is recorded and we will place it on our Scholars to Leaders YouTube channel. So if any of you here want to refer back to it, it'll be there and accessible to you. Following this, we will get the list of internships from Sadvhi and pass that along to you as well. But thank you everyone so much for joining, and I hope that you learned a lot, and we hope to see you again soon. We have another info session coming up on May 11th at 2 o'clock, and it's going to be an info session featuring Brittany Masalasalo. She is the Chief Policy Officer at HP. So that info session is going to be about technology and policy. So if you are interested, please do sign up, and we hope to see you then.
Right, great. And I'm going to try and send it in the chat. I don't know why I'm not able to send it. So maybe I'll just email it to you and you can send it out to
Yes,
everybody.
that would be fine.
No, I'm not able to send it. It's weird. Okay. I'll do that. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Nice chatting with you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.